Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to come out this morning. I am Kate Siegel. I am the Democratic Vice Chair of the Insurance Committee, and I appreciate you taking the time. As you know, we have been spending a lot of time this session talking about so-called changes to Michigan's auto no-fault system. These so-called reforms would seriously weaken the benefit Michigan consumers get if they are in a catastrophic accident in Michigan, without any guarantee of long-term savings. Today, we're here to talk about real reforms to Michigan's high-priced auto insurance rates. My colleagues and I are introducing a package of bills that will increase consumer protections and give the power back to the insurance commissioner in the state of Michigan. The bills will also increase transparency by protecting employees who come forward with bad faith practices that are happening day in and day out, and give protections to those employees for talking about it. In all, these 13 bills will improve the insurance market in Michigan by cracking down on unfair practices and sparing the good actors. And most of this legislation is based on legislation that is passed in other states that is used every day to keep insurance rates down across this country. I'd now like to turn it over to Representative Teresa Abed, who's going to talk about some specifics of the legislation. Teresa.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Siegel. The bills in this insurance reform package are grouped into three categories. There's consumer protection, affordability, and transparency. I'd like to talk about the bills in the first category, which includes a piece of legislation that I'm sponsoring. My bill is one of two that require an insurance company to act fairly and in good faith when a customer files a claim. Another bill imposes a fine of $1 million for multiple violations of the good faith provision. We have legislation that allows consumers to turn to the courts if the company engages in unfair or deceptive practices. Consumers in those cases would be entitled to attorney fees and court costs if their suit is successful. In addition, the burden of disproving bad faith action would fall on the insurance company. Finally, if a court determines that an insurance company acted in bad faith, the company must ensure that a customer's credit score does not go down as a result of late payments. As Representative Siegel said, nothing in these bills will affect insurers who act fairly and responsibly. We only want to punish those companies that act improperly. Now I'd like to turn things over to Representative Scott DeAnda, who will go over the next section of the package. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Teresa. As Representative Abed said, I'm Scott DeAnda, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the affordability parts of our package. Before we go out and gut to the no-fault system, there has to be some common sense changes that we can make to address the cost of the insurance in Michigan. First of all, we have the bill that prohibits insurance companies from raising insurance premiums when a customer is not at fault in an accident. That's just common sense. If a person isn't to blame, why should they bear the penalty? Next is the bill that I sponsored that will make it harder for insurance companies to charge those excessive rates. Currently, rates automatically deem non-excessive as long as two or more entitlees are selling insurance. My bill removes the provision from the law and leaves behind only the definition of excessive or unreasonably high for the insurance coverage provided. Third, we will have a bill that would force insurers to justify the insurance rates before they are allowed to impose them on the customers. Lastly, insurance would be prohibited from selling the rates based on credit history, education, occupation, or residency. Again, this is common sense measure. A person's level of education is not the bearish or what they should have to pay for premiums. And for that last section, I'm going to turn to Representative Banks.
Thank you, Scott. The final section of our reform deals with transparency and whistleblower protection. These first two bills were sponsored by Representative Kate Siegel. They specified that an insurance company employee who brings to light deceptive or unfair practices is covered by the Whistle Protection Act. They also established a whistleblower protection fund, which would come from the fees Representative Abed earlier spoke about. Payments from the fund could be awarded to whistleblowers who expose violations of the state insurance code. Funds would also be used for consumer education programs about insurance and their rights under the laws. And last but definitely not least, we're offering a bill that will deal with the Michigan Catastrophic Claim Association, or better known as the MCCA. This is the entity that sets a fee that all drivers pay as part of their no-fault insurance. Some supporters of the no-fault bill introduced last year said the MCCA is running a massive deficit, and that's why they want to change the system. While that may be true, the fact is we don't know if there's a deficit or not. The MCCA is unwilling to open the books to let the public know what is really there. And rather than rushing the cap personal injury protection benefits to solve a problem that may or may not exist, we would rather have the full picture. This bill requires that one member of the MCCA board represent the general public and that board holds its meetings in public. It ensures that the MCCA is subject to the Freedom of Information Act and the Open Meetings Act. It allows the director of the Department of Insurance and Financial Services to approve the MCCA fee and reject it if the fee is excessive. We deserve to know whether the surcharges drivers pay, which is really supposed to help people who sustain catastrophic injuries in a car claim or car crash, is actually just lining the pockets of insurance companies, executives. Now, I'm going to turn things over to Representative Stallworth, who will give a few closing remarks.
Thank you, Representative Banks, and thank you all for being here on this important issue. I'm State Representative Thomas Stallworth. I chair the Detroit Caucus and the Michigan Legislative Black Caucus. As you all know, we've been focused on this issue all of this session. And the reasons are the cost of insurance is far too high in Michigan. We all agree on that. But also the cost of insurance in Detroit and our other urban centers across the state are exceptionally high. As I've talked to citizens, some who have moved recently into our city of Detroit from other areas, they find that their insurance rates are automatically going up from $1,200 to $2,000 a year, something truly that is unaffordable. The residents of our city pay some of the highest rates in the nation, forcing some people to illegally forego insurance given our tough economic times. We believe these bills will go a long way in making insurance more affordable to Michigan families. We are ready to work to get this legislation signed into law. And if Republicans truly want to reform the system and lower the cost of insurance, we welcome their support on what we think are reasonable reforms to our no-fault system and insurance system.